Welcome to the Houndstrings podcast. My name is Alex and this is episode 7. Welcome to the show. I'm coming to you from beautiful Oceanside, California. For all of my new viewers, welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to have you here. This is a podcast about knitting, crochet, and other crafty goodness. We have music on the show from time to time, and we also talk about just other fun things in life in general. So again, welcome! And the same goes to all of my returning viewers. Welcome back. It's great to have you guys, and it's great to have you whether you're new or returning. Couldn't really be here without you. All right, so I've got a lot to share today. First off, before I get into that, I want to tell you where you can find me. You can find me here, of course, here on YouTube as the Houndstrings podcast. If you want to find me on Ravelry, I am Alex Handmade, and on Instagram, I am handmade_hound. And the hound part of my podcast name and my Instagram name refer to my dog, which you see from time to time in prior episodes. He is currently living with my parents in Murrieta. All right, so I've got finished objects, which I have multiple finished objects. If you don't know me, this is kind of a rare thing, because finished objects are usually a little bit slower coming. But I have finished objects. I have a work in progress, well, kind of two. Kind of fuses into finished objects and works in progress. And then, of course, I have some future knitting that I'm so excited to share with you, and I'm even more excited to cast them on. I also have a cup of tea with me, and I have some other segments that I kind of started or alluded to in previous episodes, but I cannot wait to show you. We'll start with the tea since I have that in my hand. I'm using one of my favorite mugs. It's part of a set that my mom gave me when she was working at Pier 1. And they're all Arctic critters. And I'm sipping some turmeric tea by Numi. This is one that I found at Sprouts. Just happened to see it and it looked really tasty. Here's the little package, and it has lemon verbena and lime, which I really love the citrusy flavors. Not necessarily tart citrusy, but when you just have the citrus there. So we'll give it a taste. It's really a good combination. And just gonna, pardon my hand real quick. Just going to show you what it looks like steeped. It's just a beautiful, beautiful yellow. That might be fun to see if I can dye yarns with that. There we go. I'm just going to pause while I get it back into place. There we go, much better. No sense having you get seasick or motion sick after only 3 minutes in. But that's what I am sipping right now and enjoying. And I just got it at my local Sprouts. You could probably find it at any nice little natural food store. Alrighty, so I figured we'll jump into some finished objects because I'm really excited. Like I said before, faux are something that are usually slower to come. So to have this many complete, I have one, two, an update on one that I finished a while ago, and then the third kind of falls into kind of that halfway between finished object and works in progress. We'll call them finished components for right now. But anyway, we'll start with what I have in my hand. I finished some socks! Really excited, especially because these are for myself. Other than the organza top, that I had been working on. Most of my finished objects have been gifts for people. So let's talk about these. So these are, I love these. I love these socks. I haven't tried them on. I just washed them a couple of days ago and they've been drying on the blockers. They're dry today, so I might wear these to work tomorrow. But we'll start by talking about the yarn that I used for the body of the sock, for the foot, I guess. I used Alexandra's Crafts, or at least that was the name of the yarn company when I bought it. She recently changed her company's name to Alexandra the Art of Yarn. The colorway is called Kaleidoscope, and I used part of the skein when I was working on a pair of socks for my mom, and the rest I had enough for some shorties. So I'm very happy. And I love working with this yarn and this colorway in particular because I'm kind of a combination of a project knitter and a process knitter. But this, I really enjoyed the process because each stitch was a different, beautiful color, and you really got to enjoy the color. And I really got to enjoy the color while I was knitting it. If you're interested, the base is a blend of merino, superwash of course, merino, silk, and yak. And the base I believe is called Black Butte. And again, the colorway is called Kaleidoscope. For the toes, I used MJ Yarns Minis. And let's see, and each mini is 12 grams, 50 yards. And it's your basic MCN base. So it's 80% merino, 10% cashmere, and 10% nylon. And it's in the opulent fingering base, and the colorway is called Narthex. And for those of you who might be interested in art history or architecture, the word narthex refers to the entryway of a church or a cathedral, usually a Catholic church, right before you enter the main area of the church called the nave, which is where you would find the pews where the parishioners would sit and worship. So just thought you might like to know. And as far as my typical construction, I'm a toe-up girl. Although one of these days I might try working cuff down. There are a couple of patterns that I really, really like, but they are cuff down, and it's like, oh, I don't know. But I'll give it a whirl one of these days. I usually do Judy's Magic Cast on 1.5 US needles. Let's see where. Here we go. Let's see if I can get the millimeter size. So 2.5 millimeter. I should know that by now. I look at these every day, and I talk about these on any episode where I'm working on socks. But I do toe up, 2.5 millimeters, 2.5 millimeter needles. I do 16 stitches to start, and then increase to 32, so 64 altogether for each sock. And then the heel is the Fish Lips Kiss heel, which is my go-to heel. I don't think I'll ever change, even though I might mix up whether I do toe up or cuff down. I'm going to stick with my Fish Lips Kiss heel because I absolutely love it. And then for the cuff, I do 2x2 rib, although I might try experimenting on one by one, see what kind of difference it is. That's usually what I do for my taller socks, like the crew length socks. But I'll have to see if these work for, if this will work for the shorties. So we'll see. If anything, I can always just frog back and do, I can always put a lifeline in and frog back and do one by one. All right, so that is finished object number 1. Finished object number 2 is a secret project that I had been alluding to, I think through the Advent chats. But at this point, I can tell you what it is. I finished a Stormy Sky Shawl. I had it written down. And the pattern is by Life is Cozy. And they have it, well, I knit mine. They have a crochet version and a knit version. So it's a lot of fun. And if you're a crochet person, you can even look it up and enjoy one of those yourself. So right now I think I could show you a black and white photo that I took. So that way I don't give anything away for the recipient, because it is a gift for someone that may or may not watch the podcast. So I don't want to give too much away, and even if they don't, word can spread. So I'm going to pause here so you can see. And that was so much, like I said, that was so much fun. And I thought it would be nice to make one for myself in a different yarn. And that's actually my whip. So I'll show you in a little bit the version that I'm working on for myself. Let's see. Finished object number 3 was already a finished object at one point, but I did have to frog back and rework it. So if you go back to the Advent chats, I made a hat for my boyfriend Taylor. It is the Mountain Hat by Carissa Chang. And again, pause so you can see a picture. And the color, or the yarn and colorway are Cascade 220, and I think it's called Olive Heather, but I really liked it. That's a color that I really like, and it's just a good unisex color. It can, of course, I mean, obviously, be a good color for guys. So that's why I chose that one. So what I had to do was I had to go back and extend the length before the crown decreases. And now that is my fault because I didn't look at the photographs and the pattern to begin with. Everything was perfect. My gauge was spot on, stitch per stitch. And I tried it on myself and it was too short. So went back, added a couple of inches, and it fits perfectly. So the next time we're together, if he wears the hat, I'm going to try and get a picture of him in it, or maybe a selfie of the two of us. That way you guys can see. All right, then we'll kind of start to move on into whip territory. Something that I've been doing with some of my scraps is I've been working on a blanket, or at least the pieces for a blanket. So show you what I've got. I've got a whole bunch of hexapuffs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, oops, and 6. So these are all scraps from different projects, some before the podcast, some since the podcast, but I'll show you some of the colorways that I've used. So this is Bala Jolla. This was a scrap from the shawl that I made for my mom. And the colorway is called Queen of Roses. And it's not really a self-striping, or at least I don't believe it's a self-striping yarn. It just really looks that way on the in the little puff that I made. It's cute. And I chose this one for my mom because back at our old house, she had these beautiful, beautiful roses. I think the hybrid name was Double Delight. Yeah, it was Double Delight. And they were basically this color, the cream and that just gorgeous fuchsia. And they smelled absolutely divine. So I really miss those, but at least I have it to remember in this. Then I have 3 in scraps from, again, Bala Jolla, but this one is the Market Flowers colorway that I used in my Luella top. And then lastly, I have Candy Skein, Yummy Fingering. And this is the Taro Milk Tea. Alrighty. So I will be making a quilt out of these and other scraps that I have. And I would call it a beekeeper's quilt. However, I did not purchase the pattern, so I don't feel like I should call it that. But I will purchase it eventually. And I don't have the name of the designer in front of me. I will post it in the caption. And then my current whip that's actively on the needles. I have another version of the Stormy Skies shawl. And again, this is going to be for myself. And I'm just using some acrylic that I had on hand. Super soft. And no, I am not a yarn snob. As long as it's soft and squishy and a pretty color, I will take it. I think now I generally lean more towards natural fibers just because depending on how they're raised or grown, they might be a little bit more eco-friendly than plastics, than synthetics. But if someone were to offer me a synthetic yarn in a pretty color and it's nice and soft and squishy, I would be happy as a clam, especially if it's enough of it to make a project. But anyway, mini rant over. This is James C. Brett. This is the Marble Chunky, and the colorway is called Sandpiper. Right now I have this in my Casey's Pockets to Go bag. You've seen this one before if you've watched back episodes. And here it is in the ball. And the colorway is called Sandpiper, if I didn't mention that before. I love it. It's got all the really pretty denim colors, blues, grays, tans. So this will be nice and cozy. It'll look good with over a t-shirt with a pair of jeans. I think it'll go with anything. So I am very excited about this. And since I'm using a bulky yarn, it's going by really quickly, and it feels, and obviously it's much bigger in this one than the other one was at the same point, if that makes sense. All right, we've got finished objects, whips. Now, let's gaze into the future, shall we? I've got a couple of projects that, I am really excited to start. Both of them are cardigans, so they're going to be, they're going to use a good chunk of stash, and they're going to be nice and cozy, and let's show you. So the first one that I'm working on, and in fact, you could maybe call this a whip, even though I haven't started the cardigan itself, I am doing a gauge swatch right now. So this is going to be for the Hintermost cardigan by Bristol Ivy. And I've got these lovely greens for the top half and the color work. And then for the bottom part, I've got these gorgeous blues. So I'll start by showing you the blue yarn. So this is Kelborn Woolens, and I don't have the colorway name in front of me, but it's just this beautiful, beautiful heather with purples and greens and obviously blue. But this is the Scout base, which is a DK weight. And then for the greens, I also have Kelborn Woolens Scout. Again, a beautiful heather. And this one I do remember the colorway name. This is called Meadow Heather. And then these two, I'll show one right now. This is Hearthside Fibers in the Extravagance base. And this one I can't recall the colorway name, or even if it had a colorway name. And so for those of you who have made the pattern before, you might be thinking, well, isn't it just 2 colors? Well, yes, it is. However, when I did the math, I was like, okay, I don't have quite enough of the Hearthside Fibers because this is what I had originally planned to use. So I looked for something similar, and the Kelborn was the closest that I could find in a DK. So I figured this darker color, since it would be a little too dark to do color work with the blue, I figured that I could at least use that for the button band and the collar. So that is one future project. And by the way, it is a paid for pattern, and it is well worth the price, although I did not purchase it because it was gifted to me. So I am very, very thankful. And then my other future project is the Land and Sea cardigan by, where's my little listy poo? Here it is. So it's the Land and Sea cardigan by Andrea Yetman. And this one's actually a free pattern. It's designed for biscotti yarns, which are typically fingering weight. So I thought that that would be a fantastic use of all of my beautiful seaside inspired colorways that I have. So kind of going from in order from shoulders to the hem, I'm going to be using Bayou City Yarn Company and Candy Skein. This is the Yummy series in the Beach Sweets, and Bayou City is the Glowing Sea colorway. And since I figured that this would be a little too bright to have stand out on its own, I figured it would be fun to kind of do smaller chunks with these alternating. And this was given to me by my lovely friend Jessie. She is the Two Sticks and Strings podcast here on YouTube. So I'm going to use these two. Then I'm going to use this one. This is Honey Girl Farms, and the colorway is called Days at the Beach from the Yarn Over Truck. And this was exclusive to the Yarn Over Truck. You've probably heard me talk about them before, but for those of you who haven't, what the Yarn Over Truck is basically a mobile yarn store. So imagine like a food truck, except instead of having a counter that you order from the outside, you basically walk into the truck itself, and it's lined with gorgeous, squishy, beautiful yarns. And of course, at the very front is the register, and they have all kinds of fun accessories. And these two were actually exclusive colorways, including one of the others that you'll see momentarily. They were exclusive colorways for the San Diego Yarn Crawl. And this was from 2017. This was this year's 2019. And then the one that you'll see later was from 2018. All right, and then next yarn that I'll have in that sweater is my Balahoya. You saw this during the Advent chat. This is by, or the color, of course, it's by Ba La Jolla, or it's by Ba. It's the La Jolla base, and the colorway is called Under the Sea. Under the sea, da 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 da. Under the sea, da 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 da. Down, it's better down where it's wet to take it from me. I couldn't resist. And then, lastly, I'll be using this one. Again, this was the third Yarn Over Truck exclusive. This is by Destination Yarns. This is their Passport fingering weight, and the colorway is called La Jolla Sunset. And yes, it is La Jolla, not La Jolla. It's a Spanish name, or Spanish inspired. And boy howdy, this really does reflect the beauty of a seaside sunset. It's got those beautiful pinks, blues, grays, golden, and everything in between that you would expect in a sunset. So I am very excited to start this, and here is the whole thing together. Alrighty, so I'm going to take a quick break before we get into the next segments, because I just realized it's almost 8 o'clock and I had just gotten home from work, hadn't had dinner yet, so I'll see you in a little bit. Okie dokie, I'm back. Oops. Had a lovely dinner, chatted with my family, and let's pick up where we left off. So, before I get into the original segment I had in mind, I wanted to show off a couple of acquisitions. So that being said, if that is not your thing, feel free to fast forward. For the rest of us, here we go. So these I'm particularly excited to share because we had our big all-staff meeting for work, just 2 minutes walk away from a yarn shop. How perfect is that? So for a little bit of background information, a little bit of context, I work for San Diego Humane Society, and we had our big annual all-staff meeting last week. It would have been the weekend for me, but I digress. So when they sent out the email invitation to the meeting, they mentioned that it was going to be held in Liberty Station, which is part of the Point Loma district of San Diego. And if you have not heard of Liberty Station, or maybe if you've heard of it but hadn't really been there, what it is a historic area where the Navy actually had not really a base there, but had a couple of really important sites where they had barracks, gunnery, all kinds of things that they needed during the Second World War. And now the historical buildings are still intact, and they currently house museums, little shops, eateries, all kinds of really fun things, and there's even a public market there, which is really cool. So when I realized where it was in relationship to Apricot Yarn and Supply, whoops, dropped something, I emailed or texted my two buddies that also knit. One of them is Deb from Guest Relations, and the other is Sue from Medical. And all three of us enjoy knitting and really loved yarn. And so that was our fun little thing that we did during the lunch break. So we got our food and walked to Apricot. So I want to share a couple of the things that I got because I'm really excited, especially about one in particular. Two of the things that I got were intentional. Oh, whoops. Here's Papageno. On that note, Papageno is what I named the little bird inside my cuckoo clock that I got in Germany. So two of the things were intentional. One of the things I got was impulsive. So I'll start with that one. My little impulse buy was their little enamel pin with their logo. Maybe it'll come into focus. There we go. So it's really cute. I'm glad I got it, and I've kind of started a pin collection that originated when I worked at Starbucks. So that was one of the things. The second thing that I got was a ball of Lang yarns in their lino, which is a 100% linen yarn. Now, I'll kind of wind it up. It was starting to fall out of the cake, out of its original ball. So I put it on. Right, unwound it, but here is the color. It's absolutely beautiful. I love that gold. And right now I'm kind of having some second thoughts because I originally got it to go with 100% silk. That's what I had originally intended when I walked into the shop. I saw that this was the right color, but I just realized that it's maybe a little too rough. So if you've had success in combining different yarns, I'll tell you what I had intended it for. I was going to use it in a magpie tendencies. I don't have the designer name in front of me. I will post it in a caption, but that's a project that I've been wanting to do. So anyway, I was planning on using the silk as the main body. Can't remember if I mentioned, but this is Malabrigo Mora in the Diana colorway. But I was planning on using that as the main body and then a solid or contrasting solid or coordinating solid in the shoulder panels. Now, if you have had success in blending different fiber types in such a manner rather than simply knitting them together in a project, let me know, because I'm curious. If it's just simply not going to work, let me know, because I do have a backup plan. But I really love the way these colors go together. They're just perfect. So that was another acquisition. And then my favorite one, I got these really cool yarn snips by Coco Knits. And I will say that this was something that I had looked up before the trip, and I was like, okay, even if I don't find any yarn that I like, I need to walk out with a pair of these. And I am so glad I found them, and I was gobsmacked by the price because I thought they would have been more. Apricot was retailing them for $10. So let me show you what it looks like. So this is the little leather cap or sheath. It has the brand name stamped in. And then they basically look like itty bitty sheep shears, wool shears. And listen to the snipping sound. It's just a really satisfying sound. Granted, depending on who this is, some of you might find it a little annoying, but I really like it. And I used it for the first time when I was making the socks and cutting the yarn for the color joins, and it just cuts it so cleanly. And oh my gosh, I just can't say enough about these things. They're definitely worth the investment price for this. So again, these are Coco Knits yarn snips. Put them back in the box since I'm not really using them for right now. All right, so those are the little acquisitions that I wanted to share with you. Next, we have a couple of segments that I started during a couple of podcasts before. This first one is, I call it Tools and Tricks of the Trade. Granted, that is a working title, but the intent of this segment is to show off some fun gear or techniques that some of us might already be familiar with, but others, maybe some of you are coming across these for the first time. So today, I thought it would be fun to show off a tool that I consider just an absolute joy to have on hand. But it looks really funny too. So, what is it? Huh? Did you say a nitty naughty? Yes, exactly. So some of you are like, well, duh. But again, there are some of you that might be watching that have no idea what this is. So I want to show you because I love it. So what a nitty naughty is a tool that is used to wind yarn. A lot of times it's something that spinners use when they have a finished yarn that they want to wind into a skein. So the way it works is I started to use the naughty for my linen yarn. The way it works is there's one of the end pieces, or how do I want to phrase this? Okay, got it. So the two end pieces are perpendicular to one another, and that facilitates the winding process. So if I can find the end of my yarn, here we go. So the way you use a niddy noddy is you take the end of your yarn, put it on one side. So let's say I've got it on my left-hand side. So I'm going to go down below. Actually, I think this would be a little bit easier. So I'm going to turn it around so that I've got it on the side facing away from me. So I've got it on the top. I'm going to go down to the bottom. Keep it coming towards me, up to the top, and down to the bottom on the right, and back up to the starting point. And it just basically goes in that same pattern. And it just makes a nice, neat, tidy loop of yarn that eventually it'll look like this when you take it off the knotty, and you can wind it into a nice, neat skein. Basically keep winding and winding and winding until it twists onto itself. Use my knee to demo. Oops. There we go. And that's how your tidy little skein is made for your local yarn shop. So the reason I like having this is, well, first off, I do spin, but even if I didn't, it would still be a really neat tool to have. Why? Well, let's just say you're going through your old finished objects. You come across one that you've made that you really love the yarn, but you're thinking, why on earth did I make this? If it's something that you can frog, you can frog it. As you frog it, you can wind it onto the niddy noddy, make a nice little skein, tie the loops, soak it in some water to relax those curls, hang it up to dry, and you can either put it back in a skein or wind it into a cake. That way, your recycled yarn or upcycled yarn is ready to go. No kinks, no wonky fibers. So that is why I love the niddy noddy. Do you have to get one in wood like mine? Certainly not. If you are having a harder time coming across it and you don't want to purchase one online, you can certainly go to the hardware store, get a couple pieces of PVC pipe, use one of those T-joins, and make a niddy noddy that way. Whatever you want to do. Of course, now that I say that, I will also say that I'm really big on supporting small businesses, artisans that make supplies that we crafters use in our preferred crafts and art forms. But it's a nice way to tide you over until you can do that. All right, so that is it for tools and tricks of the trade. If you have a suggestion on something I should cover for next time, whether it's a piece of equipment or even or a technique for knitting or crochet or whatever craft, let me know. If you have a name that you would like to suggest, post a comment. if you think this is a terrible idea that should never be done again. I'd hate to hear that, but I mean, sometimes you gotta hear the truth. All right. And then next thing before moving on to live chatter is I want to talk about some of the podcasts that I've been watching and do a couple of shout outs to those who have commented on my Vlogmas. So we'll start with the first, and that is Podcast Shoutouts. So when I mention these different podcasts, I have a whole list of podcasts that I subscribe to, and some of which I have watched many times, some of which I still have yet to watch. And when I select these are just whoever catches my eye. There's no rhyme or reason to this. So that being said, I would like to give special mention to Knitting on the Farm and to D Nice Knits. So starting with Knitting on the Farm. Knitting on the Farm is hosted by a wonderful lady named Angela. She's based in Northern Ireland, and I actually got to meet her on a Zoom chat with our mutual friend Jessie. Again, I've mentioned her many, many times before, but she is the Two Sticks and Strings podcast. And we had a nice little Zoom chat, and we got to kind of talk with each other, and she's just super nice. I really like her. And I really enjoyed watching her Vlogmas during Advent. And in her Vlogmas, she would talk about not only crafting, but also just day-to-day life on her dairy farm. And it's hers and her husband's. And I really enjoyed that, particularly because it kind of brought me back to my university days, because I studied animal science in college, and one of the classes I took was a dairy class, and that was basically a husbandry class, so caring for the dairy animals, the cows. So that was a lot of fun to watch. And she has a new episode. I still have yet to watch it, but I'm really excited. And yeah. The other podcast I'd like to mention is the D Nice Knits podcast. It's hosted by a gal named Denise, and there's not really one particular thing I can pinpoint. I just really like her enthusiasm, her attitude on that she presents during the podcast, and she's just a joy to watch. So again, that is the D Nice Knits podcast and Knitting on the Farm. And then as far as my podcast, I would like to send a really big thank you to all of you who watched my Vlogmas this year and supported me through all of the ins and outs, ups and downs, basically the big roller coaster that it was emotionally for me. All of your wonderful comments, I really appreciated those, and there's one person that was really consistent in commenting, and that was Marie Selders. And I loved reading those, even though I wasn't able to respond to each comment individually. They really meant a lot, so thank you. And there's one comment in particular, again from Marie, that I want to bring up, and that is the sugar cream pie recipe. Marie, if that is a recipe that you are allowed to divulge, it's not a big family secret, I would love that recipe if you have it. And in return, I will find a family recipe to share with you. All right, time for some live chatter, and wow, it feels like a lot has happened, but at the same time, not really much to talk about. Let's see. Oh, one really cool thing is my apartment is finally 100% complete. I have a dining room now. And so I had the little dining nook, but it feels like an actual dining area. I have a table, chairs, placemats, cute little bowl of fruit. So I'm really excited. And a pretty little rug that was originally my parents', but they were going to get rid of it and asked me if I wanted it. And I said, well, if we can find a way to tie it in with the rest of, tie it in with what I have, I will take it. So I'll post a couple of pictures at the end of the episode of my completed apartment. So I'm very excited about that. Also, of course, coming up is Valentine's weekend, or Valentine's Day. And this one is particularly exciting and weird because this is the first Valentine's Day that I will be celebrating with a significant other. So rather than going out to eat, which is kind of lunacy the day of Valentine's Day because everybody is going to be going out to eat, Taylor and I are just going to have a nice quiet dinner here at the apartment. We both work that day and I work the next day. So the plan is that he'll bring beverages and I'll find something to whip up on my next shopping trip, which will be in a couple of days. So just having a nice quiet evening at home will be perfect for both of us. If you guys have plans and want to share, let me know. Or if you're still in the singles awareness. That was me last year and so many years prior. So I don't blame you. Definitely a good time to treat yourself to something that you enjoy. All right, that is all I have for this episode. Thank you so much for joining me. It was fun to get back into the swing of things. Hopefully next episode will be a little bit more cohesive. But I had a lot of fun and I will see you next time. Until then, take care. Have a wonderful evening.